Welcome, everyone, to another installment of the Esoteric Wellness blog. I am your host, Coach Kyle. So what is on my mind today? Well, firstly, I find it really fascinating to me that, you spend the day in multiple client sessions, and at the end of the day, after that last session, you think back, and the majority of days, there's always arises out of that a common theme or a common thread. Maybe even I had almost identical conversations in multiple sessions sometimes. And this is just really interesting to me how this always seems to happen. And, what are the odds? Different people working on different issues in different points in their journey, totally different sets of circumstances. Like, how does that happen all the time? It's crazy. Anyway, the common thread or theme today was uncertainty. And I think this is a big one because we all face uncertainty and we all don't like it. And it can cause problems. It can exacerbate problems we already have. And so uncertainty, firstly, is just anytime we don't know what's going to happen. The situation is unpredictable. And if we make any kind of prediction, it's probably going to be inaccurate. Now, the reason we don't like uncertainty is it's an evolutionary adaptation. So our brains use by far the most energy of any organ system in our body. It is an energy hungry machine. We have billions and trillions of neurons in our brain that all run off electricity, and that's energy. So our brain has developed this desire to save energy when and where it can. And it does this by making predictions, by making assumptions. So our brain builds patterns based on all of our experiences, everything we learn. And so the next time we're in a situation, our brain recognizes one of those patterns it's built. It's like, it fits this pattern. I know what's going to happen. And your brain makes a prediction. And this saves energy because when your brain can make predictions, it doesn't have to analyze every little bit of information. All the information coming in from the senses and memory and past experience. It doesn't have to sift through all that and make sense of it because there's already a pattern that fits the situation. So it just uses that pattern, makes a prediction, and moves on. And this explains why things like optical illusions, for example, can trick our brain because these illusions are designed to fit a pattern that causes our brain to make a prediction of what it sees, and it makes us see something that's not actually there. But it's more energy efficient to make that prediction than it is to really stop and analyze all the information coming in from the eyes and make a more accurate picture of what we're seeing. And this learning is always happening, being done and undone. If you were to encounter an optical illusion that was somehow dangerous, your brain would quickly learn not to make predictions that fit that pattern anymore, or maybe make a different prediction. So this is why uncertainty makes us feel oftentimes anxious and, some level of anxiety with uncertain situations is normal. It's totally normal. It's expected. However, it can cause issues if that level of anxiety we experience is above and beyond what's useful. If it causes other problems like chronic symptoms of some kind, or it can exacerbate other existing issues like health conditions or chronic symptoms that we already have, can be made worse by times of high uncertainty. For example, one of the clients I met with today, they're preparing for a surgery next week, and there's a lot of uncertainty around, is the surgery going to work? How quickly am I going to recover? What are the challenges I'm going to face during recovery? All this stuff. a lot of uncertainty. And as a result, this individual's chronic pain and other symptoms was flaring up way worse than normal. They even had some new symptoms they had never had before suddenly. And very quickly after discussing what's going on right now, it became clear, okay, there's a lot of uncertainty here. And it's making you feel uncomfortable. It's making you feel anxious and worried. And all that can exacerbate chronic symptoms. So, what do we do when we're faced with times of high uncertainty? How can we deal with that in a way that doesn't cause so many problems, doesn't cause so much discomfort for us? Well, one way is to expose ourselves to uncertainty more often. And, we talked about anxiety and avoidance. The more we avoid uncertainty, the more severe our reaction is going to be when we encounter it. But we're naturally avoidant of uncertainty. This is why we like routine. This is why we like predictability. We feel comfortable when we know what's going to happen. And that just makes sense. So I'm not saying we need to live a chaotic life where we just don't know what's happening hour to hour. That's probably not ideal either. But at least not, you know, doing a lot of work to avoid these situations, which can also be detrimental to our quality of life. If we go above and beyond, like making sure our life remains as structured, as predictable as possible, we're probably not living high quality lives. Spontaneity, surprises, that kind of thing is important to enjoying our lives. And if you cut all that out, what's left? But anyway, so we naturally deal with uncertainty, and you all do it. I do it. Everybody does it by filling in the details. So when we don't know what's going to happen, we start filling in those details. However, we naturally do this in an unhelpful way. We start filling in those details with all this stuff that could go wrong, with all the negative, with all the catastrophic possibilities, right? I don't know what's going to happen. So I sit there and I stew on everything that could go wrong. What are all the possibilities that I would hate? And we do this to ourselves. And what that does is, yes, it eliminates uncertainty. That's why we do it. And our brain would rather deal with these catastrophic possibilities than uncertainty. Because if we come up with a possibility that fits a pattern we've developed, and your brain will know how to react to that. However, when we go down this road of negativity, of threat and danger, how our brain is going to make a prediction and do something is going to be detrimental to our quality of life, right? Because everything we fill that uncertainty with is dangerous or threatening in some way. But we can do this same technique. We can use this to our advantage to minimize our suffering with uncertainty if we simply turn the other way and fill those details with positive things, with things we would enjoy. This is an interesting aspect of the part of the brain you're trying to soothe and quiet down, is that it doesn't really know the difference between thought and imagination and reality. So if we visualize everything going right, our brain is going to react as if everything went right, is going to go right. It doesn't matter whether right, wrong, or otherwise. We could be totally incorrect about, what actually ends up happening, but that's okay. We don't need to make ourselves miserable as we're waiting for events to unfold. So this client I mentioned earlier, what we did today in session was we spent time visualizing everything going right. Surgery went well, no issues. It was was a success. They recovered quickly. They regained a lot of ability in that part of their body, and it opened up a lot of doors of things they could now pursue that they wanted to, but didn't feel they were able to before. So we just spent time visualizing the experience of everything going right and sitting with that, experiencing it. And after about 10 minutes or so, this individual's symptoms calmed down significantly by just doing that for a short period of time. We filled in that uncertainty and we filled it with things that were non threatening. So the brain, it's like, okay, we're in a safer situation now. I don't need to protect you with pain and other symptoms as much. So things quiet down. And we can consciously do this for ourselves anytime we want. It's just imagination. So that was really cool to see that kind of a positive effect in such a short amount of time. And that's how quickly this stuff can work. It's amazing. And with regular practice and consistent practice, we can actually train our brains to more naturally go down that path of positivity rather than the hardwired route of negativity, which is another survival mechanism that, if we spot the danger first, we're more likely to be able to get away from it or deal with it before it kills us. So that's just, we're more likely to live longer than if we, the pretty flowers over there. And that's the first thing we notice. But, the thing over there trying to eat me is, we don't notice that. But again, with that consistent practice of being more positive with how we feel in uncertainty, we will more naturally go down that positive route. And, you listening might be one of these people, but a lot of people they spiral down that negative path. They spiral, and the details they're filling in that uncertainty, but just get worse and worse and worse and worse until, the worst possible scenarios are coming up. So be gentle with yourself. That is normal. That is natural. That is kind of how we're predisposed to deal with uncertainty. But you can change it with consistent practice and effort over time. Now, I want to talk about another method, and this is more helpful in situations where, like, we have to make a decision about something in our lives. Could be between two or more, like, options, or it could just be deciding like a general direction that we want to head in life, something like that. So I had a client today that their chronic symptoms started as a result of their career. We figured that out early on. They had a high stress, high pressure career, the work they were doing, and that, it started eventually to manifest as chronic pain. And after many months of work and effort, their pain is much improved, and they're now thinking about going back to work. And they're certain they don't want to go back to what they were doing before because, that was the source of the issue. Although they might be able to do that and be okay, but, they're making that conscious choice not to do that. So they're struggling right now with what to do. What do they want to do for work? So again, a lot of uncertainty, a very tough decision to make. They're weighing lots and lots of options. And approaching this issue has stirred up a lot of their symptoms again, caused things to flare up a little bit because we've created a lot of uncertainty and some self-imposed pressure to make a decision, some external pressure as well. But so this technique is, it was actually developed by someone named Martha Beck. And, if this interests you, I highly recommend you check her out, look her up. She's written several books. She does coaching of her own. But she's come up with this practice called a perfect day visualization. She may actually call it something else, but that's what I seem to call it. But anyway, This is a technique where again, we're filling in the details of that uncertainty, but often with decision making, we're so focused on the what. Like, what am I going to do? What decision am I going to make? And that's very hard to deal with sometimes. But there are a lot of other details outside of the what that we can fill in very easily and in a way that doesn't create a sense of threat or danger to our brain. And I have found in using this on my own many times that it also makes that ultimate decision easier to make because it gives you more information to work off of. So instead of focusing on that what, we focus on the how. And that also leads us to the why. So this practice, as it's been set up, is I often start with just like we envision ourselves in the future once the decision's been made, everything's been worked out. We don't know how it worked out yet. And that's okay. But this is just an average, normal day. Nothing special about this day. We're just going about our day. And we start first thing in the morning when you first wake up. And we fill in details like before you even open your eyes, what woke you up? Was it an alarm? Did you just wake up on your own? What do you hear? What do you smell? Where are you? Who are you with? What time of day is it when you're waking up? All these little details. And then you get into your normal morning routine. What does that feel like? What does that experience like? How do you want that to be paced? How do you want that to go? And then once you're ready for the day, do you leave the house? Do you commute somewhere? What's that commute like? Is it long? Is it short? Is it through the city? Is it through the country? Are you driving? Are you walking? All these little details that we can start to fill in without ever touching the what, right? And you arrive at your place of work. What kind of environment is it? Is it an office? Do you work at a desk? Do you work with people? Do you work outside? Are you moving a lot while you're working? Whatever that might be. And then we just progress through that day, what the experience is like. And again, we don't know what you're doing. We don't care yet. But what this does is, again, it fills in uncertainty, fills in little details so that you can start to piece together a vision of what that future looks like, regardless of what decision you make. So there's less uncertainty to be dealt with by your brain. There's less uncertainty to worry about. There's less uncertainty for you to fill with catastrophic possibilities. And what this also does is it helps bring to the surface what we ultimately want, the why. Because when we decide what we want to do with our lives, it's really about creating the experience that we want to experience. And the what doesn't really matter with that, right? We're just doing the what thing, but this is the experience I want to have. So once you start filling in those details of what you really want the experience to be like, a lot of times you'll find it much, much easier to start deciding the what. Because you can look at potential what's and go, oh, that doesn't fit with this vision at all. That doesn't fit. That's not going to create this experience. And you start ruling things out. Or you can look at other potential what's and say, yeah, okay, that could generate this experience that I want. So again, it's a great decision-making tool. It's great at calming down our brains, calming down our anxiety, potentially chronic symptoms. It's a great way of dealing with uncertainty in a positive, helpful way. So that's my rant on uncertainty. I hope you found this useful. Maybe you can use one or more of these tools for your own benefit. And uncertainty is something we can't avoid. We can't escape from. It's just part of life. It's part of being human. But it doesn't have to be this big scary thing. It doesn't have to be something that generates a lot of anxiety or other issues for us. It can be something we ultimately end up enjoying to some degree. So thank you everyone for tuning in once again. I look forward to the next one. You are beautiful. You are loved. Until next time.